Thank you.
So has anyone else experienced the capacity to stop blaming people for the emotional state you feel and actually begin to start having a conversation on what they're giving meaning to, what emotional drivers it's evoking, and be able to have a deeper emotional understanding of it? Has anyone experienced that? You may or may not have. So Joe gives a thumbs up. Yeah. Okay, cool. Because that is by far the best way out of this person really hurt my feelings because they did X, Y, and Z. I'd love to say this one thing, and I've said it historically to you guys a lot, is that we are co-creators with whatever circumstance we're in. If we're in the circumstance, we're part of the issue that co-created the issue. So we have to take a level of accountability that whatever is happening around us, if someone is extremely either uncomfortable or upset, we have to look at, not that we take that on because it's not ours to take on, but at some point in some facsimile, either right up front or way back in the background, we've contributed to that in some way. So it becomes, if we're going to practice like Uber, being in the creative triangle, it's like, okay, what part of this is mine? What part of this isn't mine? And then how can I get more mutual understanding of this individual? And I'm going to do that by asking strategic questions that will help them be able to understand what's actually motivating them at a deeper level as well. Has anyone ever asked a person when they're upset, what is this triggering off you? What does this remind you of? Because this wasn't my intention to have this kind of, reaction. What's being triggered off for you? And I apologize for my part that I played in any part of this, but what's being triggered off for you? Has anyone ever done that before in a conversation? Okay. If you did that, like if someone had an aberration to something you did or said, and you said, I apologize for my part, and I kind of co-creating this, it wasn't my intention. And I would love to understand what's happening for you right now. What's being triggered off? What does this remind you of? Because it wasn't my intention to have this kind of emotional experience with you right now. If you did that, what do you think would happen? Of course, it's context dependent, but if you did that, is that different than you attacking back? Would it get a different result? Carolee, I'm looking at you for some reason because you look like you're deep in thought. So I will ask you that. If you did a different approach to someone who got like kind of feral on you, what would happen?
To avoid conflict in every possible way.
Of course you do, darling.
Except for with my nearest or dearest, and I'll go at it hammer and tongs with them. But everyone else, everyone else, I'm just like, I just don't want to be in conflict with them.
But if you approach the conflict differently, what do you think would happen? If you approach it from a place of accountability and responsibility, what do you think would happen?
I've got this situation at the moment because I'm turning 50 on Saturday.
Yay!
I'm having some people over, and one of my oldest friends said she can't come, and she hasn't come to any of my stuff for years because she had a fight with my husband 4 or 5 years ago. And I did say to her at her birthday a few months ago, I'd really like you to come. Do you think you could? And she was like, and then, she just ticked the thing on Facebook saying that she can't. then I'm just thinking, well, so where my mind goes with that is, so you're not going to be there for me, when shit times happen either. Because also this year her mum died and I was there with bells on, and that's, what you do for your close friend. And I just don't, so her saying no to this has brought all this baggage to me. And so I don't feel like that's just not an easy conversation to have at all, partly because I don't want to take any responsibility for it. Or maybe that's the whole lot. I just don't want to. I just think they should just be able to be in the same house. They don't even have to be in the same room. But be there, love me more than that.
Okay, that's a perfect scenario. Here's a couple different ways that you could look at it. Number one, you do not know. I'm going to make up stuff, okay? So I'm going to totally make this up. But you don't know what your husband's argument with her actually triggered off in her, do you?
No.
And you don't know whether being around what she may perceive as an aggressive male figure, what kind of fear state that may rise in her. We don't know if she was sexually violated by an aggressive male somewhere in her past history, and that somehow in an argument with someone, a strong male figure that stood his ground, what that would have brought up for her. I mean, there's all these things that we don't know what could possibly be being activated in her nervous system that causes her to say, I can't physically go. I've worked with people that they can't even be around certain personalities because all of their unresolved trauma comes up because that person's personality, not even interacting with them, not even seeing them or speaking to them, brings up all this stuff that makes them go into an aberration. So we don't know. So the position, rather than, and this is what we all do, Carolee, trust me, we all do this. First of all, we take it personally, like their behavior is about me, when actually it's probably not. And if we were to sit with them and say, and we always bring in with this kind of feedback sandwich, acknowledgement, feedback, and then another acknowledgement. If we say to her, if you say to her, and you sit down with her, you look in her eyes, maybe even hold her hands and say, I really love you and I really miss you. And I had some stuff come up and I wanted to speak to you about it. And the purpose of my conversation with you is that we grow closer. That's the first acknowledgement. We grow closer. And what came up for me was, I realized I'm taking your not coming to the party and avoiding my husband very personally. And I don't think you mean it that way at all. You may or may not be willing to talk about what that conversation triggered off for you. But I do want you to know that I love you and I care about you. And I would love at some point when you feel comfortable, maybe now, maybe later, for us to sit down and for you to explain to me what gets triggered off with him for you, so that we can reach more mutual understanding and our friendship can grow deeper. And you can say, is now a good time to talk, or would you prefer to wait? She may very well say, I prefer to wait. And you go, great. I want to thank you for just hearing me out, because my relationship with you is really important. And I just want you to know I value you and I want you in my life. Second slice of bread of the feedback sandwich. And that's all you have to say. Now, if she begins the conversation with you, that's a really ideal way for you to begin to start moving beyond what you're hallucinating right now. And every time, not once, not twice, not 100 times, every time, I've had the courage to say, I want to have a conversation with you because, I'm hurt and it's not you that's hurting me intentionally. It's how I'm interpreting these behaviors. I'm taking it quite personally, and that's mine. But this is what happens for me. And I want to know what's being triggered off for you, for the intention of us moving to a much closer, more meaningful relationship based upon the truth and based upon how we can communicate exquisitely well, so we always have understanding between each other. Every time I've done that, I have been 180 degrees wrong from my assumptions. Every time. It made me feel like I was crazy because I just assume. But my assumptions are, well, to date, always been wrong. It's always been something else. And if I have been slightly right, I've had it really distorted. What does that sound like to you, Carolee?
Really hard.
Well, let me throw this out to you. And this is where the rubber hits the road for all of us in personal development, is that the true temple is how we treat one another. That's a true temple. If we're looking for a spiritual practice in action, this is it. The actions in our relationships. It's hard, it's scary. And you notice as I'm talking, because I can feel the resistance off the call all the way from Australia. It's like, oh my God, this is too scary. This is too weird. And I just can't do this. Oh, I just hate that person too much. I have too much evidence that they're an asshole. You know, I mean, we all have this, and it is challenging. There's no doubt about it. But gang, if we're going to, first of all, stay aligned to our values, our personal values, we're going to have a practice that is based on a spiritual set of principles, then the true temple is always the temple of our relationships. Always. I wish it was different. I wish we could always be right and point the finger outside of ourselves and say, see, it's that person over there that's causing all the problem. But that's just not the truth. Now, is anyone relating to what I'm saying? Are you all hating on me right now? Don't tell the truth, Gary. Okay. Because this is a hard conversation. And we're what? We're like only on the first presupposition of masterful relationships. But this is where the rubber hits the road. Yes or no? How many of you are going like, yeah, I can see, but this is really hard. But we're not here to play it safe. We're not here to be right. We're here to heal. We're here to evolve. And we can't be in alignment with our core set of values if we're not willing to have core, significant conversations. Either we play our life in mediocrity, or we play our life living on that edge of being really uncomfortable. Because it's only in that place where we stretch that we actually grow. We don't grow other than that. We don't grow in our comfort zone. We grow outside of our comfort zone. So if we look at our lives and we go, okay, well, what do I want to be at the end of my days? And trust me, you know, hitting 70 and thinking, you know what? The clock is ticking a little bit faster. I don't know about you guys, but this year has flown by like a bullet train. And I'm looking at it going, okay, I've got maybe 15 years. Maybe when I'm 85, I may start to slow down a bit. But you know how fast 15 years goes? Like that. So I'm looking at this going, I personally, and this is just me, I am personally unwilling to bullshit myself anymore. I am unwilling to play it safe. I'm unwilling to stay small. I'm unwilling to close my mouth because I feel like I'm going to say something stupid, or that people are going to dislike me, or that it's time for me to hide. I'm not doing it. So the bottom line is, like, I got to tell you guys, I'm launching this stuff on a major platform, and lots of people are going to see me. And I'm historically, not now, not in this moment, not in the future, historically terrified of doing something like this, because I don't want all those eyes on me. Fundamentally, because I don't want people to throw like horse poo my way. I don't want to know what they find wrong. I don't want to know what offended them. I don't want to know. But I just decided if I continue to play small and safe in my comfort zone, then I don't influence as many people as I know I'm destined to. This is not comfortable for me, especially launching this. It's absolutely uncomfortable. But I refuse to play small anymore, because if we play small at the end of our lives, we die in a sea of regret. Now, there's a conversation in my past history, literally, it's probably 40 years ago, that I still need to have that I haven't had. And I need to have it. So where is it in our lives that we haven't faced those conversations that we feel are too hard? Fundamentally, because we don't want to feel, maybe we don't want to feel bad about ourselves. Maybe we don't want to take ownership. Maybe we want to hold on to our bitterness and our resentment. Maybe. Callie, do you have a question?
Yeah. Now, in the conversation with what you're saying with Coralie, do you have an example for her? Because I'm sitting here and I know I could do an energy style thing behind the scenes before she has the conversation, and that already shifts the energy before she gets there to her friend, which then makes her feel a little bit safer to speak her truth without crumbling at the start of the words, like without even not saying them. So what I'm wondering, could you share with all of us your tool?
Yeah. And this is a process that is called Ho'oponopono. It's adapted a bit, but Ho'oponopono, I learned it, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago in Hawaii. And it is a process of visualizing the person in whom you're going to have that conversation with. And there's lots of ways and adaptations to it. I'm just going to tell you what my personal one is. I know that there is infinite grace flowing to us every moment of every day. And I imagine that as a golden ocean above me. I imagine the crown chakra as a lotus that opens like a lotus on a bright sunny morning. And I imagine a river of that grace and blessings coming in from that ocean above into the top of my head, filling up my body, exiting my heart in a mighty river into the visualized form of the person which I have an out with. And I continue to flow this golden representation of grace and love and mercy to that person until I can see their body in my visualization illuminated, and until I can feel love of their soul, not their personality, but their soul, until I feel one with them. And when I do that, I would do that for one person I did this with for 2 months. And I would contemplate this for about a half hour a day. And all the discord between her and I stopped without me I didn't even have a conversation because I couldn't have a conversation. And so to prepare for a conversation like that, remember that when you go up to the highest logical level and see the person as a soul rather than the complexity of her personality, and you love that spiritual essence of her, and you claim to see through the eyes of the Holy Spirit and see the spirituality that she actually is, then the fear diminishes like exponentially, because you're talking to literally someone that you love that is the same essence as you. So it is about choosing, and the optimal word is choosing, to minimize the perception of separation and maximize the perception of oneness with that person. So Carolee, would that help you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that, Callie. Does anyone have any questions about anything I've talked about? Or are you all like, shut up, Gary, go away, I don't want to know this?
I've got something.
What?
What I loved what you just said then was the word choosing. And when I shared my piece, I mentioned I choose to value my inner child, like I choose to stay home. And it really is a decision, like with Coralie deciding just before, or, you know, 10 minutes before she speaks to this person, to bring herself back home into her heart, out of her mind, and decide what is the bigger picture, you know, like expand into the bigger picture of the consciousness that is higher than that, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And so it's all down to choice. It's all down to decision. It's, even though there's a belief in there that it might be scary, we can flip those beliefs as soon as we decide. We can flip it in the moment with a new decision, a new choice. Yes, it takes courage. It's the hero's journey, but we're choosing, but we're going to choose it from love. And the only way to do that is go back home, not in your mind, but in your heart, like back home.
And you know what I'll say about that? This takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time.
It does,
I mean,
depending on the wound depth. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
talking, I was bullied all my life. It took me a lot of time to get to the place I am now.
It takes time. And Carolee, everything I'm talking about, I mean, I'm 70 now. I've been doing this for like, 50 years, trying to get my head right, trying to get relationships right. And I'm just sharing like what I found actually works, because I tried lots of stuff. The thing that I was most ashamed of in my life is I could not create a functional long-term relationship. And that, I mean, I wanted to be in love long-term with someone. And I was ashamed all the time because I couldn't make a relationship work. And then finally, I got very serious about it. I met, fundamentally someone who resonated that same energy, because I got really serious. I attracted someone who was really serious about it. And we made a determination, we do not leave each other. We work through it. No matter how hard it gets, we work through it. We have conversations, we work through it. We do not run. And there were times I wanted to, absolutely times. But, I know that this is, and I think Kelly said it beautifully, this is a warrior's path. It is something that we have to step into, and we practice it. You're not always going to be successful, but when you approach anything from a perspective of love and desire to reach mutual understanding, the other person generally begins to melt. If we're able to enter it without our defenses, except for the defense of love and acceptance of the other person and desire to understand what is motivating them, when we enter it with compassion, we melt the hearts of the resistance, and then our shields begin to come down. And then, as Callie said so beautifully, you start to return yourself back to yourself and help that other person return themselves back to themselves. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we walk hand in hand into heaven with our brothers and our sisters, or by choice, we walk hand in hand into hell with our brothers and our sisters. Depends on what we want. And personally, I think for all of us, we require to exhibit, build, and promote more love, tolerance, compassion, and understanding of the differences between all of us. And there are. Veronica, you had your hand up, darling?
Yes. I've been thinking about how over the past year and a bit, I mean, I've done your Creating Incredible Relationships course a few times, and every time I get something new from it. But this last year or so has been an incredible realization about looking past the personality to find the person, the soul underneath, and talking to that, and realizing that to come from that place rather than dealing with personality and the ego and all the crap that comes up that really isn't that important, is making a huge difference to the relationships that I'm creating now.
It's an imperative paradigm shift that all of us, in my opinion, have to start making, because there was someone, I forget who it was that I was speaking to, but he said, I do not know. Oh, it was my friend Victor. Victor said, I do not know how people will navigate the next 15 years on the planet without having a profound spiritual practice, a daily spiritual practice. And I am a firm believer of that, because things are moving very fast, just like the Hopi elders said they would. And we require to utilize our minds and our hearts in a greater alignment to the truth, and use and utilize our relationships, not only as a mirror for ourselves, but to exhibit what we're learning and rise to a higher vibratory level through a loving interaction with differences, and choose to see sameness. When we do that, we add a jewel in the crown of our identities, and we strengthen our values and our self-esteem. And then as our self-esteem rises, we only attract the level of joy, love, and success to us that we feel worthy of receiving. If we treat people poorly, our subconscious mind is a highly moral being, and it knows it can't be lied to. And when we betray those values, our self-esteem does this, and then our fear rises, our success lessens, our joy lessens, and our happiness lessens. So that's why in the Course it says, Course in Miracles, it says, you walk hand in hand with your brother and sister into heaven, because it's through how we treat one another that we actually find our congruency, our validation for the growth that we are making. And without that, we have no test, comparative test, to test how far we've come, or what we, again, require to address and build up and stretch ourselves to do. So it really is this sort of place where relationships become a vehicle and become a temple. And if we do it right, it turns into something really quite profound for us. Okay, I'm feeling kind of complete.
We've only done number one.
How many of you got some value from tonight?
Definitely.
Okay, gang. There is, like I said, we're only on one presupposition. In a very big training, there's 63 pages to this manual. So yeah, when I finally launch it, you know, you guys are kind of going to be like going, oh my God. I had one person listen to it to do like a check on it, because I never know if I produce something, whether it's good or not. I had one person listen to it and said, well, I kind of had to listen to the first tape, which was 12 minutes, about 40 times so I could get everything out of it that I heard and suspected was there. I had to study it and study it and study it. So I don't know what came out of my mouth, but all I know is that there's some good stuff in it. So we're going to continue to kind of look at this, because truly, if we're going to lead this awesome, successful, contributive life, we have better have some awesome relationship skills down for ourselves. And most importantly, practice them and be supported to practice them. Okay, let's give a word that we want to leave for the next week. So V, I'm going to start with you, darling.
I can just think of create. That's the only word I've got in my head.
Okay. Jan? Unmute yourselves.
Yes. Beat the fear.
Very good. Thank you. Carly?
The hero's journey.
Joe?
It all starts when you learn to love yourself.
Kali?
I love that, Joe. Love yourself in your decision.
I don't know if Stan the man's still with us or if he's managing kids, but Stan, if you're there, go ahead and speak your word, buddy. Okay, let me go up. And is Lady Linda still with us?
No, she had to go. She was called into a meeting.
No worries. Okay, so my words are a quest for peace. Because when I'm at rest in my relationships and my truth's been told and I've accepted someone's truth, I have peace. When I have left communication unsaid, unspoken, I do not. So gang, how many of you thought that this was a heavy conversation tonight? And Caroline, I wanted to totally acknowledge you for being so courageous to just, come out and share that with us, because it was so beautiful, such a beautiful example of how our own inner workings, manifest. And, a lot of these things we're unaware of. Most of us, when I'm in it, I'm in it. And so I just want to thank you for being as transparent and as vulnerable as you were, and that you chose to just dive in. And I really appreciate it. It made the quality of the call, darling. So thank you for that contribution. Okay, gang, we'll rock and roll. Remember, look out of the eyes of the Holy Spirit of other people. Choose to see the higher manifestation of who they really are. And that'll bring you a lot of peace. And I will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, God bless you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.